When? I said. Last night around supper time, just when I was driving over to your place to break you the news. I might have run into them. Who told you? Well, Beechers live next to McCary's, don't they? Mrs. Beecher teaches grade 4. Alma, grade 3. Grace saw them. She had already read the paper, so she knew who it was. What is she like? I said in spite of myself. She's no juvenile, Grace said. His age, anyway. What did I tell you? It was his sister's friend. And she won't win any prizes in the looks department. Mind you, she's all right. Is she big or little? I couldn't stop now. Dark or fair? She had a hat on, so Grace couldn't see the color of her hair, but she thought dark. She's a big woman. Grace said she had a rear end on her like a grand piano. Maybe she had money. Did Grace say that too? No, I said it. Just speculating. Claire doesn't need to marry anybody with money. He has money. That's by our standards, maybe, but not by his. I kept thinking through the afternoon that Claire would come round, or at least phone me. Then I could start asking him what did he think he had done. I made up in my mind some crazy explanations he might give me, like this poor woman had cancer and only 6 months to live, and she had always been deadly poor, a scrub woman in his motel, and he wanted to give her a little time of ease. Or that she was blackmailing his brother-in-law about a crooked transaction, and he married her to shut her up. But I didn't have time to think up many stories because of the steady stream of customers. Old ladies popping up the stairs with some story about birthday presents for their grandchildren. Every grandchild in Jubilee must have a birthday in March. They ought to be grateful to me, I thought. Haven't I given their day a bit of excitement? Even Alma, she was looking better than she has all winter. I'm not blaming her, I thought, but it's the truth. And who knows? Maybe I'd be the same if Don Stonehouse showed up like he threatens to and raped her and left her a mass of purple bruises. His words, not mine, from head to foot. I'd be as sorry as could be, and anything I could do to help her, I'd do. But I might think, well, awful as it is, it's something happening, and it's been a long winter. There was no use even thinking about not going home for supper. That would finish Mama. There she was, waiting with a salmon loaf, cabbage and carrot salad with raisins in it, that I like, and brown Betty. But halfway through this, the tears started sliding down over her rouge. It seems to me like I'm the one ought to do the crying if anybody has to do it, I said. What's so terrible happened to you? Well, I was just so fond of him, she said. I was that fond of him. At my age, there's not too many people that you look forward to them coming all week. Well, I'm sorry, I said. Once a man loses his respect for a girl, he is apt to get tired of her. What do you mean by that, Mama? You don't know, am I supposed to tell you? You ought to be ashamed, I said, starting to cry, too. Talking like that to your own daughter. There. And I always thought she didn't know. Never blame Claire, of course, blame me. No, I'm not the one that ought to be ashamed, she continued, weeping. I am an old woman, but I know if a man loses respect for a girl, he don't marry her. If that was true, there wouldn't be hardly one marriage in this town. You destroyed your own chances. You never said a word of this to me as long as you was coming here, and I am not listening to it now, I said, and went upstairs. She didn't come after me. I sat and smoked, hour after hour. I didn't get undressed. I heard her come upstairs, go to bed. Then I went down and watched television for a while, news of car accidents. I put on my coat and went out. I have a little car Claire gave me a year ago, Christmas, a little Morris. I don't use it for work because driving 2.5 blocks looks to me silly, and like showing off, though I know people who do it. I went around to the garage and backed it out. This was the first time I had driven it since the Sunday I took Mama to Tuppertown to see Auntie Kay in the nursing home. I use it more in summer. I looked at my watch and the time surprised me. 20 after 12. I felt shaky and weak from sitting so long. I wished now I had one of Alma's pills. I had an idea of just taking off, driving, but I didn't know which direction to go in. I drove around the streets of Jubilee and didn't see another car out but mine. All the houses in darkness, the streets black, the yards pale with the last snow. It seemed to me that in every one of those houses lived people who knew something I didn't, who understood what had happened, and perhaps had known it was going to happen, and I was the only one who didn't know. I drove out Grove Street and on to Minnie Street and saw his house from the back. No lights on there either. I drove around to see it from the front. Did they have to sneak up the stairs and keep the television on? I wondered. No woman with a rear end like a grand piano would settle for that. I bet he took her right up and into the old lady's room and said, "This is the new Mrs. McCary." And that was that. I parked the car and rolled down the window. Then, without thinking what I was going to do, I leaned on the horn and sounded it as long and hard as I could stand. The sound released me, so I could yell. And I did. "Hey, Claire McCary, I want to talk to you." No answer anywhere. "Claire McCary," I shouted up at his dark house. "Claire, come on out." I sounded the horn again, 2, 3, I don't know how many times. In between, I yelled. I felt as if I was watching myself way down here, so little, pounding my fists and yelling and leaning on the horn, carrying on a commotion, doing whatever came into my head. It was enjoyable in a way. I almost forgot what I was doing it for. I started honking the horn rhythmically and yelling at the same time. "Claire, aren't you ever coming out? Claire McCary for nuts in May. If he don't come, we'll pull him away." I was crying as well as yelling, right out in the street, and it didn't bother me one bit. "Helen, you want to wake everybody up in this whole town?" said Buddy Shields, sticking his head in at the window. He is the night constable, and I used to teach him in Sunday school. "I'm just conducting a shivaree for the newly married couple," I said. "What is the matter with that?" "I got to tell you to stop that noise." "I don't feel like stopping." "Well, yes, you do, Helen. You're just a little upset." "I called him, and he won't come out," I said. "All I want is him to come out." "Well, you got to be a good girl and stop honking that horn." "I want him to come out." "Stop it. Don't honk that horn one more time." "Will you make him come out?" "Helen, I can't make a man come out of his own house if he don't want to come." "I thought you were the law, Buddy Shields." "I am, but there is a limit to what the law can do. If you want to see him, why don't you come back in the daytime and knock on his door, nice, the way any lady would do." "He is married, in case you didn't know." "Well, Helen, he is married just as much at night as in the daytime. Is that supposed to be funny?" "No, it's not. It's supposed to be true. Now, why don't you move over and let me drive you home? Look, the light's on up and down the street. There's Grace Beecher watching us, and I can see the Holmeses got their windows up. You don't want to give them anything more to talk about, do you? They got nothing to do but talk anyway. They may as well talk about me." Then Buddy Shields straightened up and moved a little away from the car window, and I saw somebody in dark clothes coming across McCary's lawn, and it was Claire. He was not wearing a dressing gown or anything. He was all dressed in shirt and jacket and trousers. He came right up to the car while I sat there waiting to hear what I would say to him. He had not changed. He was a fat, comfortable, sleepy-faced man. But just his look, his everyday easy-going look, stopped me wanting to cry or yell. I could cry and yell till I was blue in the face, and it would not change that look, or make him get out of bed and across his yard one little bit faster. "Helen, go on home," he said, like we had been watching television and so on all evening, and now it's time to go home and go to bed properly. "Give my love to your mama," he said. "Go on home." That was all he meant to say. He looked at Buddy and said, "You going to drive her?" And Buddy said yes. I was looking at Claire McCary and thinking, he is a man that goes his own way. It didn't bother him too much how I was feeling when he did what he did on top of me, and it didn't bother him too much what kind of ruckus I made in the street when he got married. And he was a man who didn't give out explanations. Maybe didn't have any. If there was anything he couldn't explain, well, he would just forget about it. Here were all his neighbors watching us, but tomorrow, if he met them on the street, he could tell them a funny story. And what about me? Maybe if he met me on the street one of these days, he would just say, "How are you doing, Helen?" and tell me a joke. And if I had really thought about what he was like, Claire McCary, if I had paid attention, I would have started out a lot differently with him, and maybe felt differently too. Though heaven knows that that would have mattered in the end. Now, aren't you sorry you made all this big fuss? Buddy said, and I slid over on the seat and watched Claire going back to his house, thinking, yes, that's what I should have done, pay attention. Buddy said, you're not going to bother him and his wife anymore now, are you, Helen? What? I said, you're not going to bother Claire and his wife anymore? Because now he's married, that's over and done with. If you wake up tomorrow morning, you're going to feel pretty bad over what you've done tonight. You won't see how you can go on and face people. But let me tell you, things happen all the time. Only thing to do is just go along and remember, you're not the only one. It never seemed to occur to him that it was funny for him to be lecturing me. That used to hear his Bible verses and caught him reading Leviticus on the sly. Like last week, I'll tell you, he said, easing down Grove Street, in no hurry to get me home and have the lecture ended. Next week, we got a call, and we had to go out to Dunnock Swamp, and there's a car stuck in there. This old farmer was waving a loaded gun and talking about shooting this pair for trespassing if they didn't get off his property. They'd just been following a wagon track after dark, where any idiot would know you'd get stuck this time of year. You would know both of them if I said their names, and you'd know they had no business being in that car together. One is a married lady, and worse is, by this time her husband is wondering why she don't come home from choir practice. Both these parties sing in the choir. I won't tell you which one, and he has reported her missing. So we got to get a tractor to haul out the car and leave him there sweating and quieting down this old farmer, and then take her home separate in broad daylight, crying all the way. That's what I mean by things happening. I saw that man and wife down the street buying their groceries yesterday, and they didn't look too happy, but there they were. So just be a good girl, Helen, and go along like the rest of us, and pretty soon you'll see spring. Oh, Buddy Shields, you can just go on talking, and Claire will tell jokes, and Mama will cry till she gets over it. But what I'll never understand is why, right now, seeing Claire McCary as an unexplaining man, I felt for the first time that I wanted to reach out my hand to touch him. Images. Now that Mary McQuaid had come, I pretended not to remember her. It seemed the wisest thing to do. She herself said, if you don't remember me, you don't remember much. But let the matter drop. Just once adding, I bet you never went to your grandma's house last summer. I bet you don't remember that either. It was called, even that summer, my grandma's house, though my grandfather was then still alive. He had withdrawn into one room, the largest front bedroom. It had wooden shutters on the inside of the windows, like the living room and dining room. The other bedrooms had only blinds. Also, the veranda kept out the light so that my grandfather lay in near darkness all day, with his white hair, now washed and tended and soft as a baby's, and his white nightshirt and pillows, making an island in the room which people approached with diffidence, but resolutely. Mary McQuaid in her uniform was the other island in the room, and she sat mostly not moving where the fan, as if it was tired, stirred the air like soup. It must have been too dark to read or knit, supposing she wanted to do those things, and so she merely waited and read, making a sound like the fan made, full of old, indefinable complaint. I was so young then, I was put to sleep in a crib, not at home, but this was what was kept for me at my grandma's house, in a room across the hall. There was no fan there, and the dazzle of outdoors, all the flat fields round the house turned, in the sun, to the brilliance of water, made lightning cracks in the drawn-down blinds. Who could sleep? My mother's, my grandmother's, my aunt's voices wove their ordinary repetitions on the veranda, in the kitchen, in the dining room, where, with a little brass-handled brush, my mother cleaned the white cloth, and the lighting fixture over the round table hung down unlit, flowers of thick butterscotch glass. All the meals in that house, the cooking, the visiting, the conversation, even someone playing on the piano, it was my youngest aunt, Edith, not Mary, singing and playing with one hand. Nita, Juanita, softly falls the southern moon. All this life going on, yet the ceilings of the rooms were very high, and under them was a great deal of dim, wasted space. And when I lay in my crib, too hot to sleep, I could look up and see that emptiness, the stained corners, and feel, without knowing what it was, just what everybody else in the house must have felt. Under the sweating heat, the fact of death contained, that little lump of magic ice. And Mary McQuaid, waiting in her starched white dress, big and gloomy as an iceberg herself, implacable, waiting and breathing. I held her responsible. So I pretended not to remember her. She had not put on her white uniform, which did not really make her less dangerous, but might mean, at least, that the time of her power had not yet come. Out in daylight, and not dressed in white, she turned out to be freckled all over, everywhere you could see, as if she was sprinkled with oatmeal, and she had a crown of frizzy, glinting, naturally brass-colored hair. Her voice was loud and hoarse, and complaint was her everyday language. "Am I going to have to hang up this wash all by myself?" she shouted at me in the yard, and I followed her to the clothesline platform, where, with a groan, she let down the basket of wet clothes. "Hand me them clothespins, one at a time. Hand me them right side up. I shouldn't be out in this wind at all. I've got a bronchial condition." Head hung like an animal chained to her side. I fed her clothespins. Outdoors, in the cold March air, she lost some of her bulk and her smell. In the house, I could always smell her, even in the rooms she seldom entered. What was her smell like? It was like metal, and like some dark spice. Cloves. She did suffer from toothache, and like the preparation rubbed on my chest when I had a cold. I mentioned it once to my mother, who said, "Don't be silly, I don't smell anything." So I never told about taste. And there was a taste, too. It wasn't all the food Mary McQuaid prepared, and perhaps in all food eaten in her presence. In my porridge at breakfast, and my fried potatoes at noon, and the slice of bread and butter and brown sugar she gave me to eat in the yard. Something foreign, gritty, depressing. How could my parents not know about it? But for reasons of their own, they would pretend. This was something I had not known a year ago. After she had hung out the wash, she had to soak her feet. Her legs came straight up, round as drain pipes, from the steam basin. One hand on each knee, she bent into the steam and gave grunts of pain and satisfaction. "Are you a nurse?" I said, greatly daring, though my mother had said she was. "Yes, I am, and I wish I wasn't." "Are you my aunt, too?" "If I was your aunt, you would call me Aunt Mary, wouldn't you?" "Well, you don't, do you? I'm your cousin. I'm your father's cousin. That's why they get me instead of getting an ordinary nurse. I'm a practical nurse, and there was always somebody sick in this family, and I got to go to them. I never get a rest." I doubted this. I doubted that she was asked to come. She came and cooked what she liked and rearranged things to suit herself, complaining about drafts, and let her power loose in the house. If she had never come, my mother would never have taken to her bed. My mother's bed was set up in the dining room to spare Mary McQuaid climbing the stairs. My mother's hair was done in two little thin dark braids. Her cheeks were sallow, her neck warm and smelling of raisins, as it always did. But the rest of her under the covers had changed into some large, fragile, and mysterious object, difficult to move. She spoke of herself gloomily in the third person, saying, "Be careful, don't hurt mother, don't sit on mother's legs." Every time she said mother, I felt chilled, and a kind of wretchedness and shame spread through me as it did at the name of Jesus. This mother, that my own real, warm-necked, irascible, and comforting human mother set up between us, was an everlastingly wounded phantom, sorrowing like him over all the wickedness I did not yet know I would commit. My mother crocheted squares for an afghan in all shades of purple. They fell among the bedclothes, and she did not care. Once they were finished, she forgot about them. She had forgotten all her stories, which were about princes in the tower and a queen getting her head chopped off while a little dog was hiding under her dress, and another queen sucking poison out of her husband's wound, and also about her own childhood. a time as legendary to me as any other. Given over to Mary's care, she whimpered childishly, "Mary, I'm dying for you to rub my back. Mary, could you make me a cup of tea? I feel if I drink any more tea, I'm going to bob up to the ceiling just like a big balloon. But you know it's all I want." Mary laughed shortly. "You," she said, "you're not going to bob up anywhere. Take a derrick to move you. Come on now, raise up. You'll be worse before you're better." She shooed me off the bed and began to pull the sheets about with not very gentle jerks. "You've been tiring your mama out? What do you want to bother your mama for on this nice a day?" "I think she's lonesome," my mother said, a weak and insincere defense. "She can be lonesome in the yard just as well as here," said Mary, with her grand, vague, menacing air. "You put your things on. Out you go." My father, too, had altered since her coming. When he came in for his meals, she was always waiting for him, some joke swelling her up like a bullfrog, making her ferocious looking and red in the face. She put uncooked white beans in his soup, hard as pebbles, and waited to see if good manners would make him eat them. She stuck something to the bottom of his water glass to look like a fly. She gave him a fork with a prong missing, pretending it was by accident. He threw it at her and missed, but startled me considerably. My mother and father, eating supper, talked quietly and seriously. But in my father's family, even grown-ups played tricks with rubber worms and beetles. Fat aunts were always invited to sit on little rickety chairs, and uncles broke wind in public and said, "Whoa, hold on there," proud of themselves as if they had whistled a complicated tune. Nobody could ask your age without a rigmarole of teasing. So, with Mary McQuaid, my father returned to family ways, just as he went back to eating heaps of fried potatoes and side meat and thick floury pies, and drinking tea black and strong as medicine out of a tin pot, saying gratefully, "Mary, you know what it is a man ought to eat." He followed that up with, "Don't you think it's time you got a man of your own to feed?" Which earned him not a fork thrown, but the dish rag. His teasing of Mary was always about husbands. "I thought up one for you this morning," he would say. "Now, Mary, I'm not fooling you. You give this some consideration." Her laughter would come out first in little angry puffs and explosions through her shut lips, while her face grew redder than you would have thought possible, and her body twitched and rumbled threateningly in its chair. There was no doubt she enjoyed all these preposterous imagined matings, though my mother would certainly have said it was cruel and indecent to tease an old maid about men. In my father's family, of course, it was what she was always teased about. What else was there? And the heavier and coarser and more impossible she became, the more she would be teased. A bad thing in that family was to have them say he was sensitive, as they did of my mother. All the aunts and cousins and uncles had grown tremendously hardened to any sort of personal cruelty, reckless, even proud it seemed, of a failure or deformity that could make for general laughter. At supper time it was dark in the house, in spite of the lengthening days. We did not yet have electricity. It came in soon afterwards, maybe the next summer. But at present there was a lamp on the table. In its light my father and Mary McQuaid threw gigantic shadows, whose heads wagged clumsily with their talk and laughing. I watched the shadows instead of the people. They said, "What are you dreaming about?" But I was not dreaming. I was trying to understand the danger, to read the signs of invasion. My father said, "Do you want to come with me and look at the traps?" He had a trap line for muskrats along the river. When he was younger, he used to spend days, nights, weeks in the bush, following creeks all up and down Wabash County, and he trapped not only muskrats then, but red fox, wild mink, marten, all animals whose coats are prime in the fall. Muskrat is the only thing you can trap in the spring. Now that he was married and settled down to farming, he just kept the one line, and that for only a few years. This may have been the last year he had it. We went across a field that had been plowed the previous fall. There was a little snow lying in the furrows, but it was not real snow. It was a thin crust, like frosted glass, that I could shatter with my heels. The field went downhill slowly, down to the river flats. The fence was down in some places from the weight of the snow. We could step over it. My father's boots went ahead. His boots were to me as unique and familiar, as much an index to himself as his face was. When he had taken them off, they stood in a corner of the kitchen, giving off a complicated smell of manure, machine oil, caked black mud, and the ripe and disintegrating material that lined their soles. They were a part of himself, temporarily discarded, waiting. They had an expression that was dogged and uncompromising, even brutal, and I thought of that as part of my father's look, the counterpart of his face, with its readiness for jokes and courtesies. Nor did that brutality surprise me. My father came back to us always, to my mother and me, from places where our judgment could not follow. For instance, there was a muskrat in the trap. At first I saw it waving at the edge of the water, like something tropical, a dark fern. My father drew it up and the hairs ceased waving, clung together. The fern became a tail with the body of the rat attached to it, sleek and dripping. Its teeth were bared, its eyes wet on top, dead and dull beneath, glinted like washed pebbles. My father shook it and whirled it around, making a little rain of icy river water. "This is a good old rat," he said. "This is a big old king rat. Look at his tail." Then, perhaps thinking that I was worried, or perhaps only wanting to show me the charm of simple, perfect mechanical devices, he lifted the trap out of the water and explained to me how it worked, dragging the rat's head under at once and mercifully drowning him. I did not understand or care. I only wanted, but did not dare, to touch the stiff, soaked body, a fact of death. My father baited the trap again, using some pieces of yellow, winter-wrinkled apple. He put the rat's body in a dark sack, which he carried slung over his shoulder, like a peddler in a picture. When he cut the apple, I had seen the skinning knife, its slim, bright blade. Then we went along the river, the Wawanash River, which was high, running full, silver in the middle where the sun hit it, and where it arrowed into its swiftest motion. That is the current, I thought, and I pictured the current as something separate from the water, just as the wind was separate from the air and had its own invading shape. The banks were steep and slippery and lined with willow bushes, still bare and bent over and looking weak as grass. The noise the river made was not loud, but deep, and seemed to come from away down in the middle of it, some hidden place where the water issued with a roar from underground. The river curved. I lost my sense of direction. In the traps we found more rats, released them, shook them, and hid them in the sack, replaced the bait. My face, my hands, my feet grew cold, but I did not mention it. I could not, to my father, and he never told me to be careful, stay away from the edge of the water. He took it for granted that I would have sense enough not to fall in. I never asked how far we were going, or if the trap line would ever end. After a while, there was a bush behind us. The afternoon darkened. It did not occur to me, not till long afterwards, that this was the same bush you could see from our yard, a fan-shaped hill rising up in the middle of it, with bare trees in wintertime that looked like bony little twigs against the sky. Now the bank, instead of willows, grew thick bushes higher than my head. I stayed on the path about halfway up the bank, while my father went down to the water. When he bent over the trap, I could no longer see him. I looked around slowly and saw something else. Further along and higher up the bank, a man was making his way down. He made no noise coming through the bushes and moved easily, as if he followed a path I could not see. At first I could just see his head and the upper part of his body. He was dark, with a high, bald forehead, hair long behind the ears, deep vertical creases in his cheeks. When the bushes thinned, I could see the rest of him, his long, clever legs, thinness, drab camouflaging clothes, and what he carried in his hand, gleaming where the sun caught it, a little axe or hatchet. I never moved to warn or call my father. The man crossed my path somewhere ahead, continuing down to the river. People say they have been paralyzed by fear, but I was transfixed, as if struck by lightning, and what hit me did not feel like fear, so much as recognition. I was not surprised. This is the sight that does not surprise you. The thing you have always known was there, that comes so naturally, moving delicately and contentedly, and in no hurry, as if it was made in the first place from a wish of yours, the hope of something final, terrifying. All my life I had known there was a man like this, and he was behind doors, around the corner at the dark end of a hall. So now I saw him, and just waited, like a child in an old negative, electrified against the dark noon sky, with blazing hair and burned out orphan Annie eyes. The man slipped down through the bushes to my father, and I never thought or even hoped for anything but the worst. My father did not know. When he straightened up, the man was not 3 feet away from him and hid him from me. I heard my father's voice come out, after a moment's delay, quiet and neighborly. "Hello, Joe. Well, Joe, I haven't seen you in a long time." The man did not say a word, but edged around my father, giving him a close look. "Joe, you know me," my father told him. "Ben Jordan. I've been out looking at my traps. There's a lot of good rats in the river this year, Joe." The man gave a quick, not trusting look at the trap my father had baited. "You want to set a line out yourself?" No answer. The man took his hatchet and chopped lightly at the air. "Too late this year, though. The river has already started to go down." "Ben Jordan," the man said with a great splurt, a costly effort, like somebody leaping over a stutter. "I thought you'd recognize me, Joe." "I never knew it was you, Ben. I thought it was one of them Silases." "Well, I've been telling you it was me. They's down here all the time chopping my trees and pulling down my fences. You know they burned me out, Ben. It was them done it." "I heard about that," my father said. "I didn't know it was you, Ben. I never knew it was you. I got this axe. I'd just take it along with me to give them a little scare. I wouldn't have if I'd known it was you. You come on up and see where I'm living now." My father called me. "I got my young one out following me today. Well, you and her both come up and get warm." We followed this man, who still carried and carelessly swung his hatchet, up the slope and into the bush. The trees chilled the air, and underneath them was real snow, left over from winter, a foot, 2 feet deep. The tree trunks had rings around them, a curious dark space, like the warmth you make with your breath. We came out in a field of dead grass, and took a track across it to another, wider field, where there was something sticking out of the ground. It was a roof, slanting one way, not deep, and out of the roof came a pipe with a cap on it, smoke blowing out. We went down the sort of steps that lead to a cellar, and that was what it was, a cellar with a roof on. My father said, "Looks like you fixed it up all right for yourself, Joe. It's warm, being down in the ground the way it is. Naturally, it's warm." I thought, what is the sense of building a house up again? They burned it down once, they'll burn it down again. What do I need a house for anyways? I got all the room I need here. I fixed it up comfortable. He opened the door at the bottom of the steps. "Mind your head here. I don't say everybody should live in a hole in the ground, Ben, so animals do it, and what an animal does, by and large, it makes sense. But if you're married, that's another story." He laughed. "Me, I don't plan on getting married." It was not completely dark. There were the old cellar windows, letting in a little grimy light. The man lit a coal oil lamp, though, and set it on the table. "There, you can see where you're at." It was all one room, an earth floor with boards not nailed together, just laid down to make broad paths for walking, a stove on a sort of platform, table, couch, chairs, even a kitchen cupboard, several thick, very dirty blankets of the type used in sleighs and to cover horses. Perhaps if it had not had such a terrible smell of coal oil, urine, earth, and stale heavy air, I would have recognized it as the sort of place I would like to live in myself, like the houses I made under snowdrifts in winter, with sticks of firewood for furniture, like another house I had made long ago under the veranda, my floors of strange powdery earth that never got sun or rain. But I was wary, sitting on the dirty couch, pretending not to look at anything. My father said, "You're snug here, Joe, that's right." He sat by the table, and there the hatchet lay. "You should have seen me before the snow started to melt. Wasn't nothing showing but a smokestack. Nor you don't get lonesome. Not me. I was never one for lonesome. And I got a cat, Ben. Where is that cat? There he is, and behind the stove. He don't relish company, maybe. He pulled it out, a huge gray Tom with sullen eyes. Show you what he can do. He took a saucer from the table and a mason jar from the cupboard and poured something into the saucer. He set it in front of the cat. Joe, that cat don't drink whiskey, does he? You wait and see. The cat rose and stretched himself stiffly, took one baleful look around and lowered his head to drink. Straight whiskey, my father said. I bet that's a sight you ain't seen before, and you ain't likely to see it again. That cat'd take whiskey ahead of milk any day. A matter of fact, he don't get no milk. He's forgot what it's like. You want a drink, Ben? Not knowing where you got that. I don't have a stomach like your cat. The cat, having finished, walked sideways from the saucer, waited a moment, gave a clawing leap, and landed unsteadily, but did not fall. It swayed, pawed the air a few times, meowing despairingly, then shot forward and slid under the end of the couch. Joe, you keep that up, you're not going to have a cat. It don't hurt him, he enjoys it. Let's see, what have we got for the little girl to eat? Nothing, I hoped. But he brought a tin of Christmas candies, which seemed to have melted, then hardened, then melted again. So the colored stripes had run. They had a taste of nails. Them silences bothering me, Ben. They come by day and by night. People won't ever quit bothering me. I can hear them on the roof at night. Ben, you see them silences, you tell them what I got waiting for them. He picked up the hatchet and chopped down at the table, splitting the rotten oilcloth. Got a shotgun, too. Maybe they won't come and bother you no more, Joe. The man groaned and shook his head. They never will stop. No, they never will stop. Just try not paying any attention to them. They'll tire out and go away. They'll burn me in my bed. They've tried to before. My father said nothing, but tested the axe blade with his finger. Under the couch, the cat pawed and meowed in more and more feeble spasms of delusion, overcome with tiredness, with warmth after cold, with bewilderment past bearing. I was falling asleep with my eyes open. My father set me down. You're woken up now. Stand up. See, I can't carry you and this sack full of rats both. We had come to the top of a long hill, and that is where I woke. It was getting dark. The whole basin of country drained by the Wawanash River lay in front of us. Greenish-brown smudge of bush, with the leaves not out yet, and evergreens, dark, shabby after winter, showing through, straw-brown fields, and the others, darker from last year's plowing, with scales of snow faintly striping them, like the field we had walked across hours earlier in the day. And the tiny fences and colonies of gray barns and houses set apart, looking squat and small. Whose house was that? My father said, pointing. It was ours. I knew it after a minute. We had come around in a half circle, and there was the side of the house that nobody saw in winter, the front door that went unopened from November to April, and was still stuffed with rags around its edges to keep out the east wind. That's no more than half a mile away and downhill. It's an easy walk home. Soon we'll see the light in the dining room where your mama is. On the way, I said, why did he have an axe? Now listen, my father said. Are you listening to me? He don't mean any harm with that axe. It's just his habit, carrying it around. But don't say anything about it at home. Don't mention it to your mama or Mary, either one, because they might be scared about it. You and me aren't, but they might be, and there is no use of that. After a while, he said, what are you not going to mention about? And I said, the axe. You weren't scared, were you? No, I said hopefully. Who is going to burn him and his bed? Nobody, unless he manages it himself like he did last time. Who is the silencer? Nobody, my father said. Just nobody. We found the one for you today, Mary. Oh, I wished we could have brought him home. We thought you fell in the Wawanash River, said Mary McQuaid seriously, ungently pulling off my boots and my wet socks. Old Joe Sisson lives up in no man's land beyond the bush. Him, said Mary like an explosion. He's the one burned his house down. I know him. That's right. And now he gets along fine without it. Lives in a hole in the ground. You'd be as cozy as a groundhog, Mary. I bet he lives in his own dirt all right. She served my father his supper, and he told her the story of Joe Pippin, the roofed cellar, the boards across the dirt floor. He left out the axe, but not the whiskey and the cat. For Mary, that was enough. A man that'd do a thing like that ought to be locked up. Maybe so, my father said. Just the same, I hope they don't get him for a while yet. Old Joe. Eat your supper, Mary said, bending over me. I did not for some time realize that I was no longer afraid of her. Look at her, she said, her eyes dropping out of her head. All she's been and seen. Was he feeding the whiskey to her too? Not a drop, said my father, and looked steadily down the table at me, like the children in fairy stories who have seen their parents make pacts with terrifying strangers, who have discovered that our fears are based on nothing but the truth, but who come back fresh from marvelous escapes and take up their knives and forks with humility and good manners, prepared to live happily ever after. Like them, dazed and powerful with secrets, and never said a word. Something I've been meaning to tell you. Anyway, he knows how to fascinate the women, said Et to Shar. She could not tell if Shar went paler hearing this, because Shar was pale in the first place, as anybody could get. She was like a ghost now, with her hair gone white, but still beautiful. She couldn't lose it. No matter to him the age or the size, Et pressed on. It's natural to him as breathing, I guess. I only hope the poor things aren't taken in by it. I wouldn't worry, Shar said. The day before, Ed had taken Blakey Noble up on his invitation to go along on one of his tours and listen to his spiel. Shar was asked too, but of course she didn't go. Blakey Noble ran a bus. The bottom part of it was painted red, and the top part was striped, to give the effect of an awning. On the side was painted Lakeshore Tours, Indian Graves, Limestone Gardens, Millionaire's Mansion, Blakey Noble, driver, guide. Blakey had a room at the hotel, and he also worked on the grounds with one helper, cutting grass and clipping hedges and digging the borders. What a come down, Ed had said at the beginning of the summer, when they first found out he was back. She and Shar had known him in the old days. So Ed found herself squeezed into his bus with a lot of strangers, though before the afternoon was over, she had made friends with a number of them, and had a couple of promises of jackets needing letting out, as if she didn't have enough to do already. That was beside the point. The thing on her mind was watching Blakey. And what did he have to show? A few mounds with grass growing on them, covering dead Indians, a plot full of odd-shaped, grayish-white, dismal-looking limestone things, far-fetched imitations of plants. There could be the cemetery, if that was what you wanted, and an old monstrosity of a house built with liquor money. He made the most of it. A historical discourse on the Indians, then a scientific discourse on the limestone. Ed had no way of knowing how much of it was true. Arthur would know, but Arthur wasn't there. There was nobody there but silly women, hoping to walk beside Blakey to and from the sights, chat with him over their tea in the limestone pavilion, looking forward to having his strong hand under their elbows, the other hand brushing somewhere around the waist when he helped them down off the bus. I'm not a tourist, Ed whispered sharply when he tried it on her. He told them the house was haunted, the first Ed had ever heard of it, living 10 miles away all her life. A woman had killed her husband, the son of the millionaire. At least it was believed she had killed him. How? Cried some lady, thrilled out of her wits. Ah, the ladies are always anxious to know the means, said Blakey in a voice like cream, scornful and loving. It was a slow poison, or that's what they said. This is all hearsay, all local gossip. Local my foot, said Et to herself. She didn't appreciate his lady friends. The wife didn't. No. He told them the ghost walked up and down in the garden, between 2 rows of blue spruce. It was not the murdered man who walked, but the wife, regretting. Blakey smiled ruefully at the busload. At first, Etta thought his attentions were all false, an ordinary commercial flirtation to give them their money's worth, but gradually she was getting a different notion. He bent to each woman he talked to. It didn't matter how fat or scrawny or silly she was, as if there was one thing in her he would like to find. He had a gentle and laughing, but ultimately serious, narrowing look. Was that the look men finally had when they made love, that Et would never see? That made him seem to want to be a deep sea diver, diving down, down through all the emptiness and cold and wreckage, to discover the one thing he had set his heart on, something small and precious, hard to locate, as a ruby maybe on the ocean floor. That was a look she would like to have described to Shar. No doubt Shar had seen it, but did she know how freely it was being distributed? Shar and Arthur had been planning a trip that summer to see Yellowstone Park and the Grand Canyon, but they could not go. Arthur suffered a series of dizzy spells just at the end of school, and the doctor put him to bed. Several things were the matter with him. He was anemic. He had an irregular heartbeat. There was trouble with his kidneys. Et worried about leukemia. She woke at night worrying. Don't be silly, said Shar serenely. He's overtired. Arthur got up in the evenings and sat in his dressing gown. Blakey Noble came to visit. He said his room at the hotel was a hole above the kitchen. They were trying to steam cook him. It made him appreciate the cool of the porch. They played the games that Arthur loved, school teachers' games. They played a geography game, and they tried to see who could make the most words out of the name Beethoven. Arthur won. He got 34. He was immensely delighted. You'd think you'd found the Holy Grail, Shar said. They played Who Am I? Each of them had to choose somebody to be, real or imaginary, living or dead, human or animal, and the others had to try to guess it in 20 questions. Et got who Arthur was on the 13th question, for Galahad. I never thought you'd get it so soon. I thought back to Shar saying about the Holy Grail. My strength is as the strength of 10, said Blakey Noble, because my heart is pure. I didn't know I remembered that. You should have been King Arthur, Et said. King Arthur is your namesake. I should have. King Arthur was married to the most beautiful woman in the world. Ha, said Et. We all know the end of that story. Shar went into the living room and played the piano in the dark. The flowers that bloom in the spring, tra-la, have nothing to do with the case. When Ed arrived, out of breath that past June, and said, guess who I saw downtown on the street? Shar, who was on her knees picking strawberries, said,